started, our first storyteller has been with us before, and it's a pleasure to welcome back to the Fishdale's stage Sandra Winter.
Yikes. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy that you're here. Thanks so much for coming. The theme tonight is Women and Children First, and on the website there's a picture of a lifeboat. And as a woman with children, very small children, very anxious mother, I was wishing for a lifeboat. If a lifeboat had come for me to relieve me of the pressure and the burden of raising children, I would have jumped in it in a minute and just sailed away. Sans enfant, right? But it didn't happen, right? So I settled into raising children with a lot of help from a lot of wonderful people, and they actually grew to maturity. They survived the experience, Caleb and Jennifer. So I was thinking about their childhood. I'm thinking that it's a lot about doing, burping the baby, changing the poopy diapers, wiping off the curdled milk that burped up on the shoulder. It's picking them up off the ground and brushing off the gravel from the street where they've fallen and kissing the little hand, because you know that always makes it better, right? And then hovering over the homework and trying to catch a whiff of their breath as they come home from high school parties and all of that. And that's the doing. And then all of a sudden there you are, and it's the end of something, and now they're off to college and they get jobs, and they meet people, and they fall in love, and they get married, and they have children. They have more children there are now. And now I'm a grandmother of 7 amazing kids, right? So, but what happens after all the doing? Then the doing goes on, because I am a woman, I have children, now they're 50 and 52, and I'm almost 80 on Halloween. And so what kind of doing is going on now with these children? And basically, it's so interesting to see that as I was crafting the story. I saw it's about, at this time, it's about how what I'm doing for myself is also doing for them. Before it was so clear, it was the doing for them. But what I've noticed is that, well, for example, right, this is my body. I take really good care of it. I put good food into it, I walk it, I put it to bed at night. I take really good care of this vehicle, that I'm in possession of. And because of that, my kids don't have to worry about my health. I'm taking good care of them by taking good care of myself. My mother had emphysema a long time, back and forth to the hospital, oxygen tanks in her bedroom. I worry about it a lot. My kids don't have to worry about me. So in doing for myself, I'm doing something for them as well. And then also, as I think about my social, spiritual, emotional life, I have wonderful friends. I have all kinds of great things that I do. And so, they're not sitting there on a weekend saying, gee, maybe we should bring Ma over for the barbecue, because she's been in the apartment all week by herself. It's like, gee, do you think we could ever get my mother to put in her appointment book and come over? So it's a very different kind of doing for them. It's by taking incredibly good care of myself, I'm also doing an awful lot for them, so that they can have a kind of freedom to be able to take care of the issues that all young people have, jobs and raising children and all of that. And the very last thing that I've done, doing for me and doing for them, is that I belonged to a Buddhist book group on death and dying. And part of it was for us to put all of those pieces together. And we visited the funeral parlor, and I talked to the people at the crematorium, and we filled out all of these forms about what they should do, and who they should call. And so we have a nice little, all of us have a little black binder that has all this good stuff in it that is going to make it very easy for them when I get to my expiration date. So I feel like these are things that are so relevant to both of us, and then in the doing for myself, I'm also doing for them. The topic of this Fishdale's, Women and Children First, just touched my heart so much when I saw that picture with the lifeboat. And I thought about how much I would love a culture and a country that really was a lifeboat for its women and children. And this one isn't, and it's going to be up to us to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Our next storyteller is Casey Breton. Come on up, Casey.
So, when Phoebe asked for me to share a story tonight, a lot of possibilities came to mind. I thought maybe I could tell a tender story, like how it is the first time you hear your child say the words, "I love you," and you mean it. I thought I could tell a funny story about how it is to be in labor at Bed Bath & Beyond, which would put a new twist on the beyond. I could tell a tragic funny story about the time my husband tried to yank a wetsuit off of one of our children, but instead yanked our child off of the car. The subject, like the topic of funny and insightful things that my kids have said was another possibility. So they once explained to me how they decide where to sit in the cafeteria based on what their feet are going to be touching on the floor under the table. So, for example, if you had to choose between squished grapes in ranch sauce, flattened peas, candy wrappers, or poop, you should choose the candy wrappers. But then I thought maybe I should tell a more meaningful story. There's a question I ask myself a lot, which is, what am I doing? And I thought, maybe I could try to answer that question, but I don't think I can do that in 5 minutes, and I'm not sure I can do it at all. So I thought to do the opposite. Instead of like the panorama, focus on the close-up and be specific. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell a story about how it is, what you should do when your child tells you that his hair hurts. So a few weeks ago, we went to dinner at some friend's house, and everything's going great, having a good time. Just as we're about to sit at the table to eat, my 6-year-old tells me that his hair hurts. Your hair hurts? I'm not sure what he's saying. He says, my hair hurts, it's keeping me too hot. And he has very short hair, but he's like uncomfortable and his hair is hurting. So I sort of blow on his hair and he's still complaining. My hair hurts, it's keeping me too hot, and I need a buzz cut right now. He's like insistent. So I put a cool rag and make sure he doesn't have a fever. No fever, he's cool. Put a rag on the back of his neck. He's still complaining, my hair hurts, it's keeping me too hot, and I need a buzz cut right now. I take him to the bathroom, I put his head under the faucet, and that doesn't help. He's still complaining that his hair hurts. I have the gut feeling that something is off. He doesn't complain much. This is the kid who takes a fall, gets his own ice pack. But he's never complained that his hair hurts. But we're at a friend's house. I want to have a good time. I don't want something to be off. So I decided maybe he's just tired. We put him on the futon. He lays there scrunching his eyes like he's trying to sleep. But he's not sleeping. He's complaining that his hair hurts. And I think maybe he has a headache. So I go to the car where we keep some children's Advil. And in the 30 seconds it takes me to come back to the house, he's managed to cover the entire futon in puke. We race into the bathroom. He throws up the whole way, covers the whole bathroom, everywhere except for the toilet. And now he's really, really upset. He's screaming, he's crying. And I realize I need to calm him down. So I sit him down at the table in the kitchen and I think sing to him. He likes when I sing to him. The only song I can think of is the alphabet song. So I start singing my ABCs and it works. He calms down. And I have this moment of thinking, we can still pull this evening off. Meanwhile, my 2 older boys haven't moved from the dining room table. They're stunned. They would later describe the episode as epic. And my husband and my friends are behind me, knee-deep in vomit, cleaning. It's not our house, but it is our vomit. they're cleaning, but my back is to them, and I'm under the impression that we can still make a nice evening out of it. Just at that moment, he throws up again, this time all over me, all over himself. And that's when it crosses my mind we should probably get going. So I peel out our clothes, we wrap up in towels, and we hit the road. So on the way home, I reflect. And I think about that question that I ask myself a lot. What am I doing? And I think it comes down to this, which is when your child tells you that his hair hurts, get a bucket. Because that's what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Casey. We have a little imagery leaving this show tonight. Our next storyteller is Lily Wanwussen.
Hello, how are you guys doing? I'm a little nervous, so you guys have to bear with me. When Phoebe asked me to tell a story, I was confused. I'm not really a good storyteller, but I do have memories of my childhood and where I'm from, where I come from. So I started reflecting on a lot of things that I can talk about here with you guys. And one of them happens to be about being a phenomenal woman, as my shirt says. I'm here today because I stand on the shoulders of many giants, and those giants happen to be phenomenal women. Those women include my mom, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my aunt, and my bonus moms, that I like to call them. Those are my extended family moms that raised me. For Mother's Day, a group of my mom friends organized something for mothers who passed away, and for mothers who are still alive and with us. And the mission was they wanted to kind of honor them and say thank you for all the things that they've done when they were alive. And in the middle of the celebration, about 7 women came up and told stories of their mom, the wisdom that they passed on to them, different funny memories, tales, and amid the tears, the laughter, and just the warmth, I just felt such a sense of pride being among women that helped me. That raised me, and it was just a very emotional experience that I haven't felt in a very, very long time. So that happened for Mother's Day, and I kept thinking, there were so many strong women in my life that helped me get to where I am today and be in front of you guys. And that starts with my great-grandmother, whose name is Amahoe Woleta Mariam. She was a tough cookie. She was very tough, but she was also kind, she was caring, she was loving. A funny story that my mom recalls is one time my grandmother was doing laundry outside, she was washing clothes, and a guest came by and she insisted that they had to come in the house and get food. Little did she know that she had no food in the house. She quickly realized that was the case, so she said, "Oh my God, I have no food in the house, but please have sugar. At least you'll have something in your stomach." I tell that story because, one, I think it was hilarious when my mom told me, but it also showed my great-grandmother was so kind, she was so caring, but she was also very, very tough. And she really passed that resilience and thoughtfulness to my grandfather, who is also an amazing person in our life. He, at a young age, was a businessman. He sold something called honey wine. He loved doing it, and he met so many people doing it. And one man's name that he met, this man loved his honey wine. His name is Begasho, who happened to be my grandmother's brother. And this man promised my grandpa one thing for an exchange of honey wine, and he brought my grandmother from the countryside for him. And so he gave her away at a young age of 16 for marriage. And so she always complained that, I can't believe you gave me up for some honey wine. But as honey, their love was sweet. It was amazing. They raised incredible children, and the household was full of love and thoughtfulness and chaos, good chaos. I never could think of a time where our house had less than probably like 7 people. But it was amazing. We all loved each other. My grandfather used to always bring people from the countryside to come and live with us, and that was his way of just giving gratitude for the people that were less fortunate. And my grandmother continued to be the sweet honey wine in our family. She was the backbone of our family, and she kept the love and the courage for her children, but also for her marriage. And as I'm getting older and becoming a woman, I start thinking about the legacy that she had for our family, and I want to continue to embody that, and I want to continue her legacy of love, courage, and compassion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lily. Our next storyteller is an old friend, and I'm thrilled to have him here this evening, Brian Orr.
I'm Brian Orr, and I'm a pediatrician in town. And so when we talked about women and children, first I thought, well, this is the story of my life. So it wasn't a matter of having a story, it was which one to tell. Should I tell a story about a child who had meningitis that came very close to death but survived, and mother gave me a sign saying, expect a miracle? Or should I tell a story of a child and a mother who almost died at birth from hemorrhage but both survived? I had thought of lots of different stories to tell, but I kept coming back to the story of Jamie, because it's a very special story and taught me a lot. Jamie, this was almost 30 somewhat years ago, and Jamie was a special child. When I met him, he was already close to 11, or 10 or 11, and he had cerebral palsy. He could not speak, could not walk, could not move. He was spastic, quadriplegic. He got fed by a feeding tube. And I got to know his mother well because we had to see each other a lot, because he had lots of issues, from bed sores to ear infections to pneumonias. And for the most part, for many years, we took care of him, and he got better from his illnesses. But one winter, pneumonia was getting the best of him. And at first, of course, I saw him and started him on antibiotics, and saw him back a couple days later. He wasn't doing any better. So I admitted him to the hospital. At the time, I was working at a general hospital, so I put him on the pediatric ward. And soon enough on the ward, he didn't get any better, even with IV antibiotics, so we had to move him to the ICU. The ICU was an adult ICU, it was not a children's ICU. And the ICU staff was very uncomfortable having a child there. Number one, having a child with cerebral palsy there, they were really in a panic about it. But we gave the mother an option: should we go to the ICU here, or should we transfer you to Children's Hospital? The problem with that is we all knew that Jamie was going to die. We knew this is how children with cerebral palsy who are weak, this is how they succumb, because a pneumonia gets them and they can't fight it off. So things were not looking good. So we did put him in our ICU, because at least those of us who knew him well and knew his mother were there to take care of him. So we put him in the ICU, and sure enough, he did not get better. His respirator settings kept going up. And so finally it came to a time where we had to have a conversation. So the ICU staff and I talked to the mother, and the option was that we should just start withdrawing care. So we took the tube out, and he started breathing very slowly. And so I was sitting in the room with the mother and the nurse, and Jamie, of course, and me. As we were sitting there, I said to the mother, just on the spur of the moment, I think the pediatrician came out, and I said, would you like to hold him? And she whispered, yes, could I? So I said, of course. So the nurse said, doctor, this is not against hospital procedure. This is not what we do in the ICU. So I turned to her and said, look, you have a choice. You either help me move him there or just get out of my way. So she begrudgingly helped, got tubes out of the way, and we moved Jamie to the mother's arms with him in her elbow and then face to face. The nurse immediately left the room, came back moments later with the head of the ICU, who then shuttled her out of the room in a panic. And there I was left alone with Jamie and his mother. He soon passed away in his mother's arms in a picture that only Michelangelo could carve. So afterwards, I was at the nursing station writing up the charts, writing up the death certificate, etc. And nurses and other staff came by and put their hand on the shoulder and said, well, it's really for the best. She carried a lot of burden. Now she can get on with her life. And I didn't really respond to these comments because I was just trying to get my work done. 6 months later, Jamie's mom left a message at the pediatric department. There's no texting, phones, or emails then. So I got a message that she wanted to talk to me. And at first I thought, what does she want to talk to me about? So we set up a time for coffee. We met in the hospital cafeteria for coffee. We had pleasantries, we got our coffee, and we sat down. And she asked me, did he really have to die? Could we have done something more? Should we have transferred him to Children's Hospital? So here it is 6 months later, and she was still struggling. I sat for a moment, and then I just said to her, you know what? I think Jamie died exactly how he was supposed to die. With that, she stood up, gave me a hug, and left without even finishing her coffee. This was a really poignant thing for me because I've seen many, many families with very, very special children. And I've seen them die too, some of those special children. But the thing that's really, there's no moving on, there's no life to get onto, there's no, and never was, any burden. These were their babies. And their special love has been something that I've seen many times that is very special, very deep. So for me, it's mother and children first, but it's also mother and children to the last. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Very meaningful, that story to me especially. Thank you so much. Our next storyteller is also an old friend, Catherine Clark.
My story might be somewhat cynical in comparison, but okay. I'm not reading it, I'm just nervous. Okay, so I didn't know what to make of women and children first. I was like, oh, in fact, I told her, I'm not doing that. No, I'd like to talk about all kinds of things, but not that. So anyway, I talked to people, and people always said the Titanic and the lifeboat. And my sister-in-law was the only exception, and she said, it sounds like a government program. My mother was is a feminist. She was born and raised in Connecticut. She was born in the Bronx and raised in Connecticut. She went to nursing school at Roosevelt Hospital above Central Park, where she met my dad, who was in medical school at PNS Medical School, and they eloped to a small, tiny stone Episcopal church across the river in New Jersey, where the minister was a friend of my dad's, and the minister's wife brought a tiny cake, and it was a tiny little wedding, and my mom was just 20 years old, and she told me a couple of times later in life, I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing? But she did it. And the minister said, a Mormon and a Catholic, I've never seen that before. Good luck, you're gonna need it. Natural enemies. This proved to be the case. I mean, sorry, but anyway. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, and when I was 16, an intruder drugged our dog and crept into our house, and I woke up to sense this person hovering over my bed, and I thought, this is just a bad dream. And then I went and I laid back down, fuzzy sleep state, and then he must have touched me, because I woke up again and I went, Dad? Jeff? But neither my boyfriend nor my dad would have been likely to be standing around my bed. So, I knew it was a man. So, and then at this point I knew it wasn't a dream because I could smell him. He stank. So, but I didn't, my little sister, 4 years old, was sleeping in the bed across the room, and I didn't want her to see him. I didn't want him to see her. So I just sat up in bed and went like this, because it was twilight, or it was early morning, and I couldn't really see him, but I felt around, and I started getting mad. I didn't want to wake my sister up, but I started saying, what are you, who, what? And so the guy drops on his hands and knees, crawls to toward the front of the house, which had a sliding glass door, opens the door, crawls out, and at this point I'm like, okay, well, so I jump out of bed, go pounding down the stairs, screaming, Mom, Dad, there's a man in my room. And my mom, 5'2", flings open the front door and he lands at her feet. This intruder off the balcony, because he jumped off the balcony. And my mom, she says, she just got ready, I'm gonna kill you with my head. And she's gonna butt him in the head. But instead she just says, you coward, get out of here. And my dad is meanwhile fumbling to find the bullets to put in his gun, which he safely kept separate from each other. And the cop later said to my mom, that was not a good idea to face down this intruder. He could have held you captive or something. And my mom said, it's not New York City. And he said, well, Salt Lake has horrible crime, and for our purposes, it is New York City. And my mom said, well, on sober reflection, she told me the other day, on sober reflection, she thinks that he was probably right. It probably wasn't the right move. But I think I learned a lesson, stand up for yourself. My mom took care of it. And the next day, my mom got super glue and glued tacks all around the top of the balcony, face up. My dad's meanwhile, I'm going to get some more bullets or put them in the same place or whatever. And so the question is, was my dad a feminist? And I would have to say no, because he had a bumper sticker that said, the Equal Rights Amendment takes the curves out of women. But this was Utah, right? It's still Utah. Just don't be fooled, right? And but one time I took him to task, and I now think that was deep cover, because one time I took him to task for his adherence to gender roles and the position to put my mom in, who actually made money and stuff, but he didn't learn to empty the dishwasher till he was 65. So, but he said, nope, I didn't want to be a cowboy. Maybe I wanted to be a cowgirl. You don't know me. And I was like, wow. And then he said, those damn Mormons. And so I'll leave you with this thought. There are no lifeboats, but to paraphrase Dr. Martin Luther King, we all got here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now.
Thank you, Catherine. And our last storyteller is Phoebe Potts. Come on up, Phoebe.
Hi. I just found out what a vision board is. It's you might already know. It's one of those pretty Martha Stewart bulletin boards where you pin up pictures from magazines of your hopes and dreams, and like a trip to Hawaii or twins. And then the universe feels that you've cut this out of a magazine and hung it up and gives you these things. And it was familiar to me because my mother, when I was growing up, had a vision board, and she had it tattooed inside my frontal lobe so that I knew exactly what she wanted and when she wanted it and how she wanted it. For example, when I was 7 years old, I overheard her say that I would be attending Smith College. So Smith College, for those of you who don't know, is a women's school, women's college, and it was one of the Seven Sisters, and it was conceived of to create wife material for the men of Harvard and Yale and Amherst. And my mom had been trying to transcend her Jewish immigrant root vegetable roots ever since she had applied to Smith, peroxided her hair yellow, and been rejected. If you or someone you love has applied to a prestigious college, you will know that there's such a thing called a legacy candidate. So your father went to that school, your grandfather went to that school, your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather cleared the land of indigenous people and built the school. And so you are entitled to go to that school. I'm what you would call the unlegacy candidate. My mother didn't get in, and I was to go to fulfill her destiny. Right after, not long after she got rejected from Smith, she found her way to New York City where she met my father, who, though poor, was blonde and blue-eyed and was descended from the mossy-toothed malcontents of the Mayflower. And my mother knew this because my grandmother would remind her often that though you married into us, you are not of us. Like, for example, the day before they were married, they went to Coney Island, and my father was very fair-skinned, and he got a horrible sunburn. So at their wedding, my mother turns to her now mother-in-law and says, "Oh, if I had known that Robert burns so easily, I would never have taken him to the beach." And my grandmother said, "Yes, ma'am. Our people haven't sweated in the sun for 7 centuries." Oh. 6 years later, when I was born, she came down to the hospital and she looked in my bassinet and she announced to whoever was listening, "Well, she'll be no beauty, but she'll have great character." Thanks, Grandma. So anyway, I applied to Smith and was accepted, and I didn't really want to go because it seemed stuffy and old-fashioned, and they had tea on Fridays, and there were no boys. But with my mom, I had two. There were sort of two options. I could be obedient, or I could be browbeaten into obedience. So I was going to go to Smith, and secretly, the truth be told, I kind of really wanted to go. I really wanted to just be with women, and it wasn't that I had anything against the boys. It's not like today where I have that sort of deep bone fatigue when a man opens his mouth and tries to explain my experience. It wasn't like that. It was more that after all this expensive education I'd already had, I noticed that when the boys drew a picture or were in the play or played an instrument, they were so beloved. They were so beloved. And I just knew that wouldn't it be great if we just had just a little something just for us. So the summer before I go, something really strange happens. The folks I work with at the restaurant, my peers, my friends, start teasing me. And they start saying, "Oh, that's an all-girls school. That's a lesbian school. Oh, you're going to be with lesbians. Your roommate's going to be a lesbian. You're going to be a lesbian." And I had nothing against lesbians. For all I could tell, lesbians seemed like sturdy, helpful citizens. They didn't seem to be causing any trouble. But what was alarming to me about the way they talked about it was that they were saying that I would be having sex, and that would require my having a body, and I didn't know I had a body. So that teasing was unbearable, and not going would be life-threatening to live with my mother and not go to Smith. So I did what any good person with middle-class skills did. I wrote a letter to the dean of students, and I said, "I don't want to live with a lesbian." And my parents, my mother especially, to all her friends and say, Bola, tell her about the letter that you wrote to the dean. I said I didn't want to live with a lesbian. And they sounded kind of like those pigeons under the George Washington Bridge, all her friends. Ooh, ooh. And then I got a letter from the dean. And it was the most elegant and diplomatic piece of writing I think I've ever seen, and I will paraphrase it. It basically said, we don't do that. We don't discriminate between our students, and we cannot honor your request. I wrote her right back, you're right, I'm sorry, and I'm so excited to be there with my duffel bags in September. So I went to Smith, and I thought we would be taking the patriarchy apart brick by brick every night, and arguing and looking at everything through a Marxist feminist perspective. And my entire incoming class just seemed to be made up of girls named Betsy, Jennifer, Jessica, Jennifer, and Jessica. And the only question they had for authority, they were like the Stasi. Is this going to be on the exam? Like, that's the only thing they asked. So it took me a couple semesters to find where the revolution was fomenting. And it was in a tiny little vegetarian cooperative full of nothing but lesbians. So the semester I moved in there, I walked in into the kitchen and it was dreamy. The sun was streaming in. There was a big pot of black beans bubbling on the stove. They were cutting tofu by the slab. There was this big poster of a Sandinista smiling, and she's got her baby on one hip and she's got her AK-47 on the other. And it says, Anda Nicaragua. And in front of me is this array of powerful plaid lesbians. And they kind of regard me the way you would a ladybug, sort of like, oh, it's an insect. Oh, it's not going to cause us any. And they went back to their conversation of talking about the summer movies that they had seen through a Marxist feminist perspective. And it was great until they got to The Little Mermaid. You know, the one with Ariel, and she's got that tiny little wasp waist, right? And I was like, oh my God, they're going to shred her. And I really liked that movie. And so I sort of held my breath. And then the largest, most powerful plaid lesbian sort of cocked her head and said, that's okay. She made her own choices. Months later, I had mounted a campaign against the college in a bitter union dispute on behalf of the working people who cleaned the buildings at the school with all of my comrades. And I found myself shouting in the face of that same dean. Something helpful like, you can't balance the budget on the backs of the workers! And what that woman, that dean, did not do, she did not run back to her file cabinet and take out my homophobic letter and wave it in my face and show it to my comrades. Instead, she did what she probably had always done with these women children who arrived and then evolved and then graduated. She just planted her feet and took a deep breath and let me have all my sound and fury. Thank you. I curated nothing. I asked a few people to tell a story. Maureen does everything, and Henry does everything else.
Thank you, Phoebe, so much. Again, it's a joy working with you. Thank you all for coming again. Our Fish Tales program doesn't happen without the audience, and so it's always a thrill to see you here. Thank you for coming. Come back on July 20th for our show. It's called Our Town. And don't forget, get your tickets to the June 23rd Incredible Dancer Party. It really is fun. Food and dancing right on Pavilion Beach. I'll see you next time. Thank you.